So, what I've been thinking about this morning is if you feel like you don't belong anywhere, is that a path to spiritual insight? And my thinking is no offhand, but it's kind of like when Putin was asked if, like, it's destiny on the path that Russia's on or something like that. I forget what Tucker Carlson, how he asked him, but basically he was asking him about divinity and if that is part of his inspiration, Putin's inspiration, and he he did not say that he thinks divinity plays a part in what's going on right now. But I think we all know it is. I think we all know it is, and he knows that too. But at the same time, it's like you can also relate a lot of things to cause and effect. Like, have I felt like I belonged anywhere ever? Well, no. But part of that was my social conditioning because I grew up in the Jehovah's Witness cult, but I was also raised by kind of like a weird family. Like, we were like the worst Jehovah's Witnesses ever. I mean, my grandparents were the best, but we were the worst because my dad was kind of a cult leader in itself. So we were distant from everyone. Like, we didn't really belong there either. It was just convenient rules for our household to follow. And then, of course, in public school, I wasn't even allowed to associate with the kids there outside of school, and I never did sports or anything extracurricular. And that probably sounds harsh. Like, I'm not going to say sports are not healthy for kids. I definitely think sports are healthy for kids. But I think the way kids do sports now, and we did play outside and stuff with the neighborhood kids and that kind of stuff. But kids now with their sports, I feel like the family has to become so involved with them because there's no just simple after school programs now. Now you have to be a part of a club, and there has to be travel involved, and there has to be leagues. And I mean, it seems like everything is so involved now that families actually become servants to kids as opposed to kids serving the family. And I don't think there's good results coming from that. But that's like beyond the point. The point is, when I was a kid, I never really belonged anywhere. And then growing up, I just kept putting myself in situations where I knew I didn't belong where I was headed towards. Like, for example, going into hair school, I went in there knowing that people put an overemphasis on its importance and that sort of thing, that the top level does, So I went in knowing I wasn't going to belong. And it's fine not to belong. It's fine. But even in motherhood, I think when you've had the background that I've had, and then you become a mom at 21, and you haven't, like, processed anything, and then you read Dr. Sears, and so, for me, like, the whole thought that I could control a little bit the way my kids were going to feel forever, it was like my mission was to make sure my kids didn't cry. And I do think I suffered from postpartum depression too. Like, my first daughter, when they poked her foot to see if she had jaundice, which is pretty routine, I started uncontrollably bawling my eyes out, and I couldn't stop for like a very long time. And it is surprising that no one caught on that could be an issue. They just sent me home. But yeah, I definitely felt like I had extreme emotions when my kids were young. Plus, like, when I was pregnant with my first daughter, I couldn't even look at the ultrasound. Like, I just didn't have the maturity. It just emotionally struck me that there was a life inside of me, and I had a hard time even looking. Like, a lot of women get, like, too many ultrasounds probably. They just love looking at the baby. I couldn't look at it, and she knows that and stuff like that, so I don't feel weird saying that. So, yeah, I can see the abortion temptation for a lot of people because I felt very detached to my pregnancy with my first one. But then, like, the second I held her, it changed me. And then when I read about, like, my important role as she was developing in the first couple of years of life, I think I just almost became crazed with that. Like, I couldn't handle her crying. I couldn't handle them crying. So I couldn't hang out with other moms. I just couldn't. I couldn't just lay out in the sun and ignore my baby trying to get along with other toddlers and stuff like that. I just couldn't do it. So I've always been in a situation where I've been pretty isolated because I had a hard time fitting in with other people. And I breastfed them for like too long, especially back then. Socially, that's just not what people were doing. But I don't regret doing any of it. I really don't. But yeah, I just put a lot of pressure on myself always. And I guess you call that anxiety. I think I probably did have a legitimate anxiety condition. But I got through it. But for me, like, belonging to a group, that's just never been a thing. Never experienced that. So do I think that that's a path to enlightenment? I don't feel necessarily enlightened. It's just I've had a lot of experiences that I've been able to derive a lot from because I've put myself out there a lot. So it's like when it comes to, are we a slave to the system? Are we all just a cog in the machine? Well, yeah, that's true. Like, I don't love what I do for a living all the time. I don't love all the crazy people I have to talk to all the time. And just to see certain sides of people. I don't love that, but I derive from it. So I'm not benefiting from it. So I don't know. I guess it's perspective. It does play a key element into your experience on this planet, even if you're uncomfortable a lot, even if you're doing things maybe you're not meant to do. I've never been someone who's focused on my happiness first. I've always felt a lot of anxiety and a lot of like need to push forward. And so no, I don't think that's the path to enlightenment. But, it's like I have derived a lot from my life. And I think perhaps some of these kids that their families are just so focused on their basketball or volleyball or whatever the case, they may not be deriving the same things out of life because they're around too much of the same thing. They're in echo chambers of helicopter moms that want to spend a lot of time vacationing. And my daughter's 21 now, and it's not awkward, but because I've never hung out with other moms that much, so I haven't gone to the beach and let the kids play while I laid out in the sun. I've never been able to do stuff like that. And I've worked indoors almost my entire adult life. And even when I did gardening and stuff, I did a lot of this stuff in the morning. So I don't have skin damage like a lot of people do. And I've always used good product too. I've always used Dermalogica. So I've used good product, but I think mainly I just have stayed out of the sun a lot. And so I just don't have skin damage on my skin or sun damage on my skin. And so compared to a lot of 42-year-olds, I look kind of young. And my daughter, who's 21, we look a lot alike, kind of. And so a lot of people, when they find out that I'm her mom, it just gets them weird for a moment, because I know in the back of their mind they're thinking, were you like 13 or something? But I wasn't. I was 21. And biologically, that's not too young to have a kid. Like, I was fertile for a long time before that. So, yeah, it wasn't a weird age to have a child, actually. But in today's society, it seems strange. But I derived a lot from the experience of being a young mother. And even though my pregnancy, I probably did have a lot of depression and anxiety and that sort of thing, it's like one of the most impactful experiences of my life, having a child at 21. And it's interesting how, the people that actually pursue happiness instead of like, I have this shitty job that I have to do and I don't want to do it. Okay, well, where does that lead you like 30 or 40 years from that? And it's like, okay, well, I never had a job or a life where I vacationed or spent time in the sun. And now I'm at an age where I don't have sun damage. So, it's like sometimes you just never know the turns that life is going to bring you and the results that you're going to get from it. And I think a lot of life is going through unpleasant things and then how you react to it. I know that's not mind-blowing wisdom or anything like that, but I can say that my life is kind of a testimony to that, because I haven't done tons of stuff that are that remarkable. Actually, pretty normal stuff in the scheme of things. But our society now is so not normal that I've had different results than most people have while being a fish out of water. Like, my results are probably more normal, more like how things should be. But I'm a fish out of water because it's just so contrary to what everyone else has experienced. So, anyway, I don't think I'm enlightened, though, that's for sure. It's just what you derive out of life on the path. Anyway, that's my thoughts.